Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare? I'm here with Anthony from Fever Dreamland Theater. Thank you so much, Anthony, for doing this collab video with me. I've been super excited to do this video with you ever since we started talking about it. Today, we're going to be discussing Dr. Sleep. It's actually the sequel to both the Shining book and the movie. And this was written and directed by Mike Flanagan. We actually just finished our discussion on The Shining, which you'll be able to find over on Anthony's channel. We'll just go ahead and get it started. So in this video, we'll be talking about the characters in Dr. Sleep as well as the creep factor, and we'll talk about how it worked as a sequel to the film. Anthony, thank you again. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Anthony from Fever Dreamland Theater. Thank you so much, DeRay, for having me. It's gonna be awesome. I am looking forward to talking to you about Dr. Sleep, and it should be great. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So we definitely have our Danny and Wendy, who are returning characters. At the end of The Shining, they were able to escape because Dick Hallorann kind of saved the day, even though he was killed by Jack in a very gruesome manner. But Wendy and Danny do escape, and personally, I think she did a really great job in portraying, Shelley Duvall's character. Anthony, tell me, what did you think about the new Wendy?
The new Wendy. All right. So on a first watch, because I'm so used to the old movie. Like on a first watch, it was a little weird. Not bad, but it was just a little weird. It took some getting used to. But on rewatches, I've gotten used to the new actress. I've gotten used to the new little boy who played Danny. I'm a Star Wars geek, so I'm wondering what it would have been like if they'd done some CGI work or would that have just totally taken us out of the movie? Ultimately, I think they made the best choice. Just pop some new actors in there. Let them do their thing. Let them inhabit these performances and do their own thing. And it's only for flashbacks, really, at the beginning, right? So it serves as like a launch pad for the rest of the movie. Ewan McGregor, of course, takes over for the rest of the movie. So I was happy with the new performance. I think it was a nice little strong performance.
Yeah, and they totally, though, I think, used some of the sound bites from the first movie when she's calling out for Danny in that first part where he's out, on the park bench with the new Dick Hallorann, and she's running out to him, Danny. Yeah. That was definitely Shelley's voice.
That 100% sounded like her. Yeah, I didn't know if it was just maybe, the actress was just doing an impersonation or whatever. I know it's not the right word, but that's cool. I didn't know that if they actually.
Well, I mean, I didn't look that part up, but it just seemed like it just had to be. It just was too perfect.
It does. It sounds very perfect. So, so it's very likely.
Yeah. And so unfortunately in Dr. Sleep, Danny has basically taken on his father's alcohol addiction. At the beginning of Dr. Sleep, we see young Danny, and he's mute because he had this whole traumatic experience at the Overlook Hotel. And, when it's just Wendy and him, he doesn't speak, but he gets a visit from Dick Hallorann because he's still getting these visions of the ghosts from the Overlook Hotel at his new apartment, or I guess it might be the old apartment that they stayed in before they went to the hotel. But Dick teaches him how to control basically his visions and those ghosts by trapping them in a box that he's created in his mind.
Oh, yeah, I love that too, by the way, the box.
Yeah, the box thing was super cool. At first I was like, it's kind of cheesy, but then at the end, I liked it a lot more than I did.
Yeah, they brought it all together.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, after his mom passes, when he gets to be a little bit older, like maybe late teens or 20s or something like that, his alcohol abuse starts to get really bad. And it sort of felt like to me that his shine wasn't very strong when he was under the influence, because once he decides to go sober after feeling guilty for the death of the girl he took home and her baby, he starts to get the messages from Abra. So it made it seem like his shine kind of came back after he decided to go sober. So I found that pretty interesting because, that's the same issue that Jack had. And so, I'm getting into Abra. She's just an amazing actress, right alongside Danny from the first film. they're neck and neck on their caliber. They were great.
Yeah.
What did you think about Abra?
Yeah, I loved it. And even there was a younger girl, right, who played her in the beginning, and then we aged her up a little bit. Both girls.
She was good too.
Spectacular job. Yeah. So definitely there's a career ahead for her. She was great.
Looking forward to her career for sure.
Try it.
In Doctor Sleep, we definitely have way more characters than we had in The Shining. We also have the addition of the True Knots. And so we basically have 3 storylines happening in this film instead of just one. We have Danny going through his sobriety and meeting his new best friend, Billy. And then we have Abra, who is basically able to see what these group of True Knots are doing. And then we have the True Knots doing what they're doing, which is basically killing fellow shiners, because they're all supposed to be able to shine. In the book, apparently, I didn't read either The Shining or Doctor Sleep, but from my research, it looks like in the book, the True Knots all have their own special abilities, but in the film, we don't really see their individual abilities. We only see Rosie the Hat doing what she does, and then we see, what's her name? Snakebite Andy doing what she does, the very new recruit, who is 15 in the film, but in the book, she was like in her 30s, which I thought was kind of weird that they made her so much younger than they did in the book. Yeah, because I think, her whole thing was she liked to track down pedophiles and basically scar them for life and punish them for what they're doing. So I'm like, okay, cool, I get that's why maybe she had to be that young, but she could have been 30 years old looking like a 15-year-old. I thought that was just a weird choice because she was definitely supposed to be sexy and seductive, but then they chose her to be 15 years old. So that kind of just rubbed me the wrong way, even though she was punishing folks for being attracted to teenagers. But anyway, so we have this group of True Knots who basically feed off the steam of people who shine. And when we see them feed off of one little boy in particular, that scene I was like, okay, I'm watching this movie now. Like I was watching it and enjoying it from the very beginning, but that film just really got me like, all right, or that scene really got me like, okay, what's going on? What's about to happen after this?
And for me, I'm just gonna say, like, for that part, the first time out watching, I watched it, right? And then on a rewatch, nope, I hit fast forward.
Really?
It's tough to sit through. Like on one side of it, I could say like, hey, they did it. This movie, like it has some walls. They put everything in, and it's a horror movie. This is a horror, right? I'm just saying, for me, like, I guess we all have our lines, and just for me, it was just, that is a rough scene. I mean, that stands out in my mind. Like, that's like that one scene that's like, oh, I enjoyed this movie. That one scene though, that's a
And apparently it was pretty true to what happened in the book, and a lot of people thought that it wasn't going to be in there because it was so terrible, but it was there, and it was to the T for the most part. So it was pretty interesting.
I believe there's 2 cuts of this movie, right? There's a director's cut and there's a theatrical cut. I've seen both versions, and I could swear that the director's cut has even more of
really?
that. Yeah. So I mean, either way, I'm zooming by that part a little bit.
So again, I haven't read the book, but it seems like the first 2/3 of the film are pretty much exactly what happens in the book. And then we have the last part, which basically was all the fanfare that Mike Flanagan thought would be a good idea. And so you and I kind of talked a little bit about it through messaging, like, oh, it's kind of surprising that Stephen King would be okay with this since he hated The Shining so much. But that was basically all Mike Flanagan's idea, to like bring all that into it, because he wrote that into, his script and ran it by Stephen first, and Stephen was like, okay, we can do that. Like, I'm down. It kind of gives everybody a little bit of what they want, and it kind of redeems my hate for The Shining. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. That was a fun part. And I knew that stuff was coming because it was big in the advertising, right? So I did find myself enjoying the movie a lot, but sort of waiting to see the Overlook again, right? Because like, we know it's coming, we know it's gonna probably be the finale, and they did it. They went for it, and it looked pretty legit. Some of it felt. It's fan servicey, right? But is it? So it's always a question with that stuff. Like, is it fan service good or is it fan service bad? For me, it worked. It was okay. It wasn't because it wasn't overdone.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And it was cool to see Danny basically become his father, which is apparently what happens in the Shining book. He had basically what happened in the end of The Shining happened at the end of Dr. Sleep. I just thought that was super cool and creative that Mike thought to just be like, okay, I'm gonna put the Shining novel ending into this new film. Yeah, and that's not even in the book.
Yeah, that was an interesting creative choice, wasn't it? And again, I think it, despite the fact that it's like it's the ending from the original book, it works. It actually works really well. Actually, I think maybe it's because Danny he's redeemed basically at the end. He has at least he doesn't just murder this poor little girl. He has a moment where he comes to his senses and he tells her to get out and he blows up the hotel.
Why are you smiling?
Because you don't know where you're standing.
So yeah, and then to get into the creep factor of it all, it just goes back to the True Knots. They are what really make this film super creepy. The fact that they feed on anybody, including small children, trips me out. And then when they die, when they're cycling, I really liked that. It was super creepy, and I just loved the visuals, especially when Grandpa, I think is what his name was, Grandpa, when he died. That was awesome. And then when we see Snakebite Andy, the 15-year-old girl, die, and she has the power to basically make people do what she says, and she tells Danny's friend to kill himself.
Yeah, that was brutal.
And he does. Yeah. That was awesome. And it was
awesome.
It was terrible and
no,
awesome
at the
same time. But no, I was awesome. Like, Billy! That was one of the more sad moments in the film because he was great.
Yeah,
he was a great friend.
Yeah. Oh, the cast across the board was pretty good in this. The True Knot would be my creep factor thing for this movie too. They're a whole and the thing about them too is they're a whole different element for this story. You watch The Shining, right, and it's its own thing, and then this movie comes in and we're introducing this whole different element, this whole group of people who are like these vampires, sucking out the shining power from children. That's a whole new element. This is a whole new story in a way, but it works miraculously. It works. So that's the creep factor for me too. Is just this group of people. They are so sinister. They plot. They're manipulative. Rose the Hat, an incredible villain. That was a great performance. They're just so threatening throughout the whole movie, and like you really feel for this little girl. But let me tell you something though. Do you ever really feel like she's in danger though? Like, because they're a threat. They're a good threat. But when they come up against her, it's like she is so powerful. I love that actually. That's a fun part of the movie, that she's so powerful that now it's like, oh, this is a challenge now for them. Finally, they've been doing this for years. They've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, that's what
it's implied, right, that they're doing this for a long time, and now they come up against this little girl. And Danny's powerful too, and I love that aspect of it. But it seems like Abra is the one that's really like next level when it comes to Shining.
Yeah.
So I love that we get this great conflict.
Her strength is definitely very apparent at the very beginning, because she's just kind of peeking on them, especially when they're, killing that young little boy, and Rose the Hat is, feeling her presence, and she hasn't felt that in such a long time. You can just kind of tell that Abra is going to be the one. She's the new Neo, essentially. Yes. And then Danny, of course, his shine was never that strong, or at least he never explored it. And again, I feel like his alcoholism, kind of suppressed all of that. Now he's basically exercising it and being pushed to use it even more by her. He could have been maybe just as strong as her if he had honed in on it,
Yeah, just like so many years of like drug and alcohol abuse, and him just, I guess, shutting himself off to that. It's like, but it's almost like he did his thing, like he locked away his demons, and that was it. He didn't want to know any more about this power. And even when this girl's trying to communicate with him, he's a little hesitant to get back to her and stuff. But yeah, I love all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think it definitely worked well as a sequel. It trips me out still that it works as a sequel, as you know, for the film and for the book.
Yes.
It just intertwined these two worlds just perfectly. It gave us what we wanted. It gave us something new, and yeah, it was a trip.
Yeah. It works for me as a sequel too, which is surprising. Yeah, when I first heard about this, it was just like, oh boy, it sounded very like hit or miss. Like I don't know if this is gonna work. But again, I go back so many years with The Shining, and it's one of those things where it's just like, don't mess with my Shining, man. Come on, don't mess with one of my favorite horror movies of all time. But so the fact that not only were they able to get like a sequel out of this, but it was a pretty solid sequel. You know, it's not perfect, but it's like surprisingly good. It holds up. It functions as a sequel. You know, Flanagan, like he was smart the way he handled it too. Like this, he doesn't necessarily, he's not Kubrick, right? Like we don't see it necessarily in the cinematography and stuff, but he's doing his own thing, and I think that's fine. He sort of carves out his own identity with this movie. You know, at least to me, and it still works. And it works. It's like it works, but it works, and it's surprisingly works really well. Like you can watch these two movies back to back, and despite the fact that we have flashbacks in the beginning with whole different actors, it still functions. It still functions as like a story.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about Dr. Sleep that stood out to you that you want to share with us or share with the world?
Anything else? Well, Ewan McGregor, I wanted to say something. This was a really nice performance from Ewan McGregor. I am so looking for. See, I always have to go back to Star Wars because I'm such a Star Wars. But I'm so looking forward to seeing him in Obi-Wan. But no, we're not talking about Obi-Wan. We're talking about Dr.
You can. That's fine.
We're talking about Dr. Sleep. He did really nice here, and you know. I guess spoiler alerts or whatever. He doesn't survive the movie, unfortunately. But I do wonder, because we see Dick Hallorann show up again. If there's ever a sequel, I mean, there's room to bring him back in ghost form, and I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind seeing a continuation of this story. The door is left open. What do you think of that? Do you think?
I really, really hope they do. Is there a trilogy here? Have to, yeah, because it's funny. There's a scene where Dick says, basically, "This is my last time that I'm gonna give you advice," and then he takes off, and then now we basically see that same relationship between him and Abra. And if they don't do a third film, it's just going to be a sad story. They have to go ahead and do this because, you know, what's her name? Rose the Hat says she's not the last one. She's just the prettiest one. So we've got more true knots that we can discover and try to kill, you know, with Abra and her new team possibly. So I'd be so excited to see that.
And I hope they bring back the same actress. Like, even if it's something where it takes 10 years, that might be fun to revisit in like another 10 years. You know, I think that there's a lot of potential there. I hadn't even considered that till I guess we started talking and stuff. But yeah, it's cool. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, all right, fellow Stardust, there you have it, our discussion on Dr. Sleep. And again, if you want to watch our discussion on The Shining, go ahead and head over to Anthony's channel at Fever Dreamland Theater. And thank you again to Anthony for joining me today. This was an absolute joy. I cannot wait to do this with you again. I appreciate you.
No, it was my pleasure. I'm very glad to have been here. Thank you, fellow Stardust.
I love it. Well, all right, y'all. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.